Jai Anilo Premadano Karma Kacho
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 31, Text number 36. Prajapati Svam Hitaram Yadasva Tadrupa Darshitaha Rohit Bhutam So Vadavat Riksharuti Hatatrapaha Prajapati Swam Duhitaram Drisvatat Rupadarshitaha Rohit Bhutam Son Adavat Riksharuti Hatatrapaha Prajapati Swam Duhitaram Drisvatat Rupadarshitaha Rohit Bhutam Son Vadavat Riksharuti Hatatrapaha Prajapati Swam Duhitaram Drisvatat Rupadarshitaha Rohit Bhutam Sodhavat Riksharuti Hatatrapaha
Prajapati Swam Duhitaram Drisvatat Rupadarshitaha Bhutam Som Bhagavat Riksharuti Hatatrapaha Prajapati Swam Duhitaram Drisvatat Rupadarshitaha Bhutam Som Bhagavat Riksharuti Hatatrapaha Prajapati Swam Duhitaram Drisvatat Rupadarshitaha Bhutam Som Bhagavat Riksharuti Hatatrapaha
Prajapati Swam Duhitaram Prajapati Swam Duhitaram Drisvatat Rupadarshitaha Bhutam Som Bhagavat Riksharuti Hatatrapaha.
Okay, can we move this? Yes. wind was blowing over them. All right, we're going to recite the word for word. Prajapati, Lord Brahma, Svam, his own, Duhitaram, daughter, Drisva, having seen, Tadrupa, by her charms, Darshitaha, bewildered, Rohit Bhutam, to her in the form of a deer, Saha, he, Andhadava, ran, Diksharupi, in the form of a stag, Kata, bereft of, Trapaha, shame. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. At the sight of his own daughter, Brahma was bewildered by her charms and shamelessly ran up to her in the form of a stag when she took the form of a hind. A hind is a female deer. Purport. Lord Brahma's being captivated by the charms of his daughter, and Lord Shiva's being captivated by the Mohini form of the Lord, are specific instances which instruct us that even great demigods like Brahma and Lord Shiva, what to speak of the ordinary conditioned soul, are captivated by the beauty of woman. Therefore, everyone is advised that one should not freely mix, even with one's daughter, or with one's mother, or with one's sister, because the senses are so strong that when one becomes infatuated, the senses do not consider the relationship of daughter, mother, or sister. It is best, therefore, to practice controlling the senses by performing Bhakti Yoga, engaging in the service of Madan Mohan. Lord Krishna's name is Madan Mohan, for he can subdue the god Cupid, or lust. Only by engaging in the service of Madan Mohan can one curb the dictates of Madan, Cupid. Otherwise, attempts to control the senses will fail. So once again, yesterday and again today, we have the cold reality forced before our eyes. And it's not a very pleasant picture to consider. Scripture often says things in very blunt ways. And so this is certainly a blunt prescription, blunt instruction. When we read a verse like this, many will probably think, how can this be so? Or is this true of me? No, certainly it's not. So why should it even be stated? And sometimes I've heard people complain that frank discussions about this type of subject about sex should certainly not be discussed in public, what to speak in the temple. But here we see the statement is coming from Scripture itself. And not only that, but the examples which are highlighted are the most exalted personalities of all. There are no more exalted persons in the material universe than Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. They are the topmost personalities. And yet we know that even they became subdued because of sex attraction. Here in this verse, the example is discussed about Lord Brahma. Of course, Lord Brahma is born, he's known as Aja, one who does not take birth, because he did not take birth in an ordinary way. He was born directly from the navel of Vishnu, from the lotus that grew out from the navel of Vishnu. And it's important to recognize that even though he had such an exalted birth, we know that he also took initiation to become twice born. So even if one has Vishnu as one's father, as Lord Brahma does, and he's so exalted that he has Vishnu as his father, he has Vishnu as his teacher, and he has Vishnu as his shelter, like a mother, because when it comes time for the partial annihilation of the universe, he enters into the womb, practically, of Vishnu. So mother, father, and teacher, and still he has to take his initiation. He still has to get instructed in hearing the mantra, first from the flute sound of Krishna, and then from the goddess, divine goddess Saraswati, he hears the Gayatri, Kam Gayatri mantra. But still, we find that Brahma became bewildered. I didn't do any research on this verse. I don't know why Brahma's daughter took the form of a she-deer, but we know why Brahma took the form of a male deer, a stag. Whether they both agreed to do so ahead of time, I'm not certain of, but if someone wants to research it, they can find out. But in any case, it is known that demigods can change form at will. Nowadays, many movies show, powerful, right? They show this quite often. It's a frequent theme in movies of persons changing form. And demigods can change form. And one of the reasons sometimes they do so is to enjoy sex life. They take different forms, like birds or animals, so that they can enjoy sex pleasure, which indicates that in every species of life, this type of pleasure, sex pleasure, is available. And it is so fascinating that, again, as we take the birth as a human being, we again try to enjoy this type of pleasure. But we're enjoined by Scripture that since this pleasure was available in so many different forms of life to us, and we tasted that pleasure again and again, we should just consider what is the unique feature of human life which distinguishes it from all the other species. And then we're told that Atartha Brahma Jignasa, now that you have a human body, you should inquire into the subject of Brahma. And then Janma Dasa Jagaha. That Brahman is that from which everything comes out. This is the Vedanta Sutra. Vedanta Sutra is compiled by Vyasa, and the sutra means in a very abbreviated, shortened form. So the subject matter of Vedanta, the conclusive truth of the Vedas, is contained in these sutras, and of which Brahma has compiled them. And each of the sampradayas, just like our sampradaya, has an explanation for the subject of Brahman, to explicate Brahman. And the beginning of it is this truth, that the absolute truth is that from which everything comes. So as a human being, we should try to understand Brahman. And of course we know in our understanding this Brahman feature is most complete in the feature of Bhagavan. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Vedanti tat tattvam vidas tattvam yajnanam atrayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdeta. Those who are learned persons understand the absolute truth in three features. And the most complete understanding, in our view, is Bhagavan realization, the realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And among the personal forms of the Lord, we consider Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. The Bhagavatam says, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. He is the original personality of all. So this is the purpose of human life. But unfortunately, all too often, the purpose of human life is missed. And in these verses, we find that the cause of obscuring the purpose of human life, most of all, is the attraction for the opposite sex. So this attraction is so great that one may even be attracted to one's own child. And we don't have to just seek examples of Brahma and of Shiva to know the truth of this statement. Because in today's society, unfortunately, there are so many instances of this sort of relationship. Srila Prabhupada often would lecture about animals like hogs and dogs. And he said that hogs and dogs have such a propensity for sexual attraction that they do not consider who the partner is in sex life, even their own mother or daughter, Prabhupada said. So that this is certainly animalistic nature. And unfortunately, although we are considered rational, reasonable beings, we're also supposedly classified as rational animals. So that tells us that we have animal instincts which can only be controlled by reason. And therefore, the Bhagavatam class, Prabhupada said, is a way in which every morning we can hear what it means to be a human being. And we have to repeatedly hear it, because the tendency is to give in to our animal propensities. And the tendency is so strong today that, it's not just a small matter, but it is very rampant, that this sort of illicit connections. Again, as we lectured yesterday, the Vedic culture that we are trying to reestablish, and we can't fully reestablish it, but we're trying to reestablish it as best we can, gives us a sense of how to conduct ourselves properly. If children are raised with great love and care, then they will naturally reflect this love and care later on. And the relationship between the parents and children should be proper. Especially, as Prabhupada says, if the basis is Bhakti. Srila Prabhupada makes a point in the purport. Before I say that, I'll say something about Shiva. The example is given of Mohini. That Shiva is considered to be more powerful than Brahma. In the Nectar of Devotion, the qualities of 64 qualities of Krishna are described. And it is said that Brahma and Shiva have more than the living entities. But between Brahma and Shiva, Lord Shiva is still more powerful. So although Brahma could be attracted by his daughter, the only one who could allure Lord Shiva was not even his wife. Shiva is said to be so sense-controlled that even his own wife could not agitate him. And she performed an act which would normally have agitated anyone, but he was not agitated. So he's so tolerant. Lord Shiva is considered to be the most ultimate emblem of tolerance. But he could not resist the attraction when Krishna, the Supreme Lord, took the form of the Mohini avatar. So it is said that Shiva, the only one that could actually allure Shiva in this way, was the Supreme Lord himself, when he took the form of the Mohini. Still, Lord Shiva is so powerful that when he emitted semen from his body and it fell upon the ground, then that semen was transformed into so many different things. So never was his semen lost in vain. And Shiva was still is considered to be all auspicious in everything he does, every act he does. I always think of this example of Shiva when he passed semen in this way, following the Mohini, that the semen was transformed into so many different things, that it teaches us that no act, no thought, no word that we are responsible for should ever go in vain. Every single thing that we should do should be productive and fruitful. We should not waste human life unnecessarily. Now, the senses are very, very difficult to control. And Prabhupada makes the point that the attempts to control the senses will fail by any other method other than bhakti. And there are examples of great powerful yogis, for example, who perform severe tapasya, but who failed to control their senses ultimately when they were lured by sex attraction. And there's a number of instances of this. So what to speak of ourselves, who are very, very fallible, and who have very unfortunate upbringings. We do not have the advantages of these great sages. We have no hope of controlling our senses simply by austerity. But the senses can be controlled, as it is said, Rishikesha Rishikenam Sevanam Bhakti Uchite. Bhakti is particularly described as engaging the senses in the service of the master of the senses, Krishna. This is the definition, one of the definitions of bhakti. So all of the senses have to be used. Your ears have to be engaged in hearing the holy name and pastimes and glories of Krishna. Your eyes have to be engaged in seeing the beautiful form of the deity. Your body has to be used in the seva and the service practically of the deity. And in this way, the senses will become concrete. The senses are described like, the teeth or the fangs of a poisonous serpent. But it is said that for one who is a devotee of the Lord, the fangs of the serpent become broken. There's no possibility of the poison of material existence being injected into such a person. So, full absorption in Bhakti Yoga is the recommended process. Krishna is known as Madan Mohan. Cupid or the Kamadeva, really. My professor always objected to the translation of the word Kama as Cupid, because Cupid is a particular person in mythology, Western mythology, which is really a different person. But Prabhupada, in his desire to translate in a way that people would be able to relate to, made this connection. In any case, Kamadeva, please want to say Kamadeva so my professor doesn't get excited to hear me say it. Kamadeva became allured by the beauty of Krishna, and therefore Krishna is known as Madan Mohan. Mohan means the bewilderer of Madana. Madana is Cupid, of Kama. And so Srimati Radharani is known as Madana Mohana Mohini, Because just as Krishna attracts Kam Devi, Srimati Radhika attracts Krishna. And so, therefore, when people ask, who is stronger, we know that ultimately Srimati Radharani is stronger than Krishna. Because Krishna cannot resist her allurement. So, of course, here again you see that even the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes infatuated. But we know that the attraction between Radha and Krishna are not considered to be harm or lust. They're not ordinary sexual attractions. The Chaitanya Chaitamrita says that the comparison between Radha and Krishna and Gopis' loving affairs is like gold, whereas the ordinary loving affairs of this material world are like iron. And there's a vast difference, although both are metal. The difference between iron and gold, the difference between lust and love, is that love is based on serving another person selflessly, whereas lust is based on arranging for another person to serve you. And so, this should give us some indication about how affairs between husband and wife should be conducted. If you want the relationship to be based on lust, then you will each use each other for your own selfish interests. And unfortunately, the relationship may one day come to an end. But if you see yourself as a servant of your wife or the servant of your husband, as a servant of your children, if the children are taught to be servants of their parents and servants of their brothers and sisters, then this mood of serving is actually an indication of love. And those relationships will never break. They will carry on even into the spiritual world. So, again, we come to the point of Dharma. Dharma is described as that which is sustaining. And Prabhupada says the only thing that sustains in relationships is service spirit. So Sanatana Dharma means the eternal serving mood of a living being. And that eternal serving mood goes beyond simply serving husband, wife, and children, which are all reflections of the eternal serving mood. But the eternal serving mood finally comes to the point of serving in the eternal relationship. So the eternal relationship is our relationship with God. But that is a generic description to say that I'm a servant of God. That doesn't tell me exactly who I am or what I am. When we say, who are you? We can say, I'm Krishna Das or Krishna Dasi. But that doesn't tell me exactly the nature of what my Das or Dasi really is. What is my service to Krishna? So the purpose of human life finally comes to the point of understanding our eternal relationship with Krishna. And we are told that there are 5 principal relationships, which we also are known as rasa. And this word rasa is a very nice word. It can be used in a material sense, like when you taste food, that is rasa. Each type of food has a particular relish or taste. And the science of aesthetics means the science of beauty, of understanding, appreciation of beauty, is based on this theory of rasa, how to taste. So something must have taste within it in order for you to taste it. If you want to taste, say, a particular food as sweet or sour or bitter or pungent, it's because the food itself has that taste, and therefore it's reflected in your ability to taste it. So when we speak of rasa in terms of God, it is because God is full of all taste. He is rasa raj. And that doesn't only mean that he tastes in relationships, but he himself is the basis of all taste or loving mellows. Prabhupada uses the word mellow of his guru's translation. The mellow, a mood, a loving mood. So, Krishna, there's this verse in Bhagavad Gita, Yeya tamam prapadyante, tamastatavatha jamyam. Krishna rewards each person according to their desire. So from a worldly point of view, we may have desires, oh God, give me wealth, oh God, give me good health and long life, or oh God, give me liberation, even. That's a more transcendent desire. But from a completely spiritual point of view, when you get beyond these type of material requests and you begin to understand what is my desire internally of the soul, what does the soul desire? Then it comes to the point of who you are. So Krishna consciousness means to understand who you are in relationship to Krishna, or what particular form of the Supreme Lord attracts you most. And this is not so much a question of, like saying, choosing one thing or another thing as you go to a shop to select a product. Oh, I think I'll buy this brand today and try it out. It's not like that we try out different relationships with Krishna, but rather it is a case of purifying the consciousness of all material dirty things, all of the different types of impressions which have impressed themselves upon your consciousness from this lifetime and the past have to be cleared away. That's described as upadis. Sarvapadi nirmuktam, tat pratvena nirmam. When they become reduced to nothing, when all of these impressions, false impressions, right? That I am this or I am that, and you are this and you are that, and we are related and I want this, and all of these things get cleared away, and we come to the point through chanting, sincere chanting and serving, we come to the point of being able to allow Krishna to reveal himself to us in a form which is all attractive to us. Then we begin to serve Krishna in that way. So, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to relish all of the various different loving moods, but particularly came to relish the mood of Madhurya Bhakti. And although there are many persons who are attracted to this Krishna consciousness movement, many persons, they are not all attracted to the same degree. But even so, it is not a fact that everyone who joins the Krishna consciousness movement may necessarily be attracted to this Madhurya Bhakti, or the relationship that Krishna has with the gopis. Just like in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's assembly of devotees, there were many. For example, Srivas Thakur. Srivas Thakur is said to be the same person as Narada Muni. And Narada Muni is a devotee of Lord Narayan. So he enjoys his service to Narayan as a servant to the master. Murari Gupta, the physician, is said to be the same as Hanuman. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the associates tried to make Murari give up his attraction for Ram in favor of being attracted to Krishna, Murari couldn't do so. And finally he told Lord Chaitanya that it is better that I die, because I cannot give up the lotus feet of Ram. So, how each one of us is attracted, we will have to find out. And it will come, it will be revealed as we become purified. But still it is seen that primarily the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and you can also see Nityananda Prabhu and his followers, so many of them are in the mood of cowherd voice. So this is a different mood than the gopis. Cowherd voice, Sakya Bhakti Ras, is different. So each person has a particular loving relationship, and Prabhupada in his Nectar devotion discusses all of these. And he does not say much about the conjugal relationship, often because it can be easily misunderstood, but also because he didn't translate another book, Ujjwala Nilamani, which Rupa Goswami considered that of the 5 rasas, he describes 4 of them in Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu, but the 5th rasa, Madhurya Rasa, Shringara Rasa, is left for a separate book, which didn't get translated by Prabhupada, but it will eventually become available. And it describes all of the different loving relationships that the gopis have with Krishna. Prabhupada does say at times that our goal is to one day be able to go back to be with Krishna and take part in Ras Leela, to take part in the rasa dance with Krishna. So this is a special gift, no doubt, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally came to relish and to extend to others. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the combined form of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. Krishna, desiring to understand the mood of Srimati Radharani, took the mellow of Srimati Radharani, took her color, he stole away her color, and covered himself with her color and her emotions. And this is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, the Srila Rupa Goswami, the 6 Goswamis, they're all in this loving mood of assisting Srimati Radharani in her service to Krishna. And so they assist Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his ecstatic meditations. So hearing, Sukadeva Goswami states in the Bhagavatam, in the 10th canto, that anyone who hears the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna will be able to give up the propensity for lust. And therefore, in every one of our temples, practically every temple, the central deity that Prabhupada established is the deity of Radha and Krishna. And so, we understand by this that the mood of Srila Prabhupada, just as when he traveled personally around, he would travel with Radha Krishna deities. And from his childhood, he worshipped Radha Krishna in the temple of Radha Govinda. And then his father gave him Radha Krishna deities to worship. So certainly we know that Prabhupada also was in this mood, although he did not explicitly state so. But we can understand from the way in which he worshipped himself personally and the deities that he installed everywhere in the world, that this was his mood. And so we try to hear the pastimes of the 10th canto, which he gave us, the Krishna book. Now many other books are coming out, which describe the loving affairs of Krishna in Vrindavan, and be absorbed in this consciousness, just like our disciple Kirtana now. You know, it's the fact that when you go into her room, you go into Vrindavan. It's very clear. And the reason you go into Vrindavan is that she's in Vrindavan. That's the only reason. It's not that the pictures make Vrindavan. She's made Vrindavan. So a devotee, wherever a devotee goes, is a tirtha, a place of spiritual pilgrimage. And because she happens to be a devotee of Vrindavan and a devotee of Srimati Radharani, so she creates the mood of Vrindavan. And everybody that gets into her association will get that mood. So let us, each of us come to the point of realizing what our particular loving relationship with Krishna is. This is the goal. And you must realize that if your entire day is only absorbed in this activity of material affairs, don't miss this goal. Just like I have to do, it's unusual for a sannyasi, because most sannyasis, they simply absorb themselves in constant Radha Krishna or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's service. Unfortunately, I picked a topic for my thesis, which is Prabhupada's teachings. And so I'm absorbed all day also then. But I have to do so many things to come to this point. But I never neglected my bhajan, my worship And I think it's a good example, even though I'm a sannyasi and many of you are grihastas. Still, you can see by the example that I use my morning time for meditating on Krishna and Vrindavan and the loving affairs of Krishna and his eternal associates. And so, I don't lose sight of what the goal is, even though throughout the day I have so many other things that I have to do. And we should also be in this way in our mood. Whatever you happen to be doing as your affairs of life, whether it's raising your children or going out and working, it should not eclipse the purpose of your life. You have to realize what the purpose of your life is. Don't think that you can do what Kirti is doing now at the last moment. You have to realize and remember, Kirti lived in Vrindavan for quite a few years. And she didn't just live there, but even though she went to Vrindavan. The doctor told her that she would only live another 6 months at most. But from that position of being in the kind of physical condition, she was doing Govardhan Parikrama. Not just once in a while. She would sometimes do Govardhan Parikrama day after day, and very quickly walk around Govardhan. So the remembrance in her mind was very fixed in Vrindavan from being there for a number of years in a row. And then when I had left Vrindavan and came to do my studies, and then I was in England, and then I had my surgery and went back to England, she left Vrindavan because she thought that if my guru can't be here, then how could I be here? So I had to go and be where he is so I can assist him. So she went into a very mundane occupation, in one sense, for 2 or 3 years, even though her mind and heart was in Vrindavan. But you can see now that the fruit of it all is that she did seva to her guru. She lived in Vrindavan, and now, very peacefully, she can meditate in Vrindavan. She's in Vrindavan. That's why when I discussed with her what she should do, I said, I think you should stay in Dallas. And after I thought this, I called up Gurijan Prabhu, and I asked him his opinion, and I asked either Shriram Raj or Ekaduma Raj. And they all confirmed what I thought, that it was better that she stay in Dallas. And my reasoning was that I had full confidence in her consciousness, that she could bring Vrindavan wherever she was. But I also thought that this temple, I remember when Satsvarup Maharaj gave a lecture, the first time he came to this temple, he said, it is impossible not to think of Krishna in this temple because of these paintings and because of these deities. And, I was talking with Ekanath, and he said to me, he liked the temple in Houston more than this temple. And many people say that, because he said it's got more windows on it, you can look out. But to be honest, I like this temple much more. I did not say I like the deity. I like the deities equally, but the temple, the reason why I like the temple is for the opposite reason of why you like the Houston temple. You don't have to feel bad about this, because there are many devotees who prefer the Houston temple. You're not the only one. But the reason I like it is that, you see, you're a yogi already, and you're sense controlled. So when you look out the windows, you don't forget Krishna. But if I look out the windows, I'm afraid I may. So the reason why I like this is that these windows, which Prabhupada said, pictures of Krishna are like windows into the spiritual world. Your consciousness can't go anywhere in this temple room. It really can't. So it's interesting, many temples in India, South Indian temples, they have this same, you go into the sanctum sanctorum and you can't look out. But it's interesting that it's a different system in North India, especially we can see in Vrindavan. The Govindaji temple is open air more. And our temple also. So anyway, I just was thinking that when I told Kirtana, the point I'm getting to Kirtana, I thought that this place is really Vrindavan. This temple has a tremendous Vrindavan. I mean, a number of you know, I remember when Kirtananda came here, when we opened this temple, he told me that, you know, this temple is defeated. He said, you defeated Prabhupada's palace, you know, the inside of Prabhupada's palace, because it was so captivating. So this design was done by Sarabi Maharaj, and Pashupati Prabhu built it. And it is the most spectacular, very beautiful place. So I had confidence that when Kirtana comes here, that this, you know, this is the Dham. This is the Dham. And all the houses on the street are like a village in India. And they're all devotees living in these houses. And I felt that it will be very easy for everyone to be with her. And in Vrindavan now it will be very hot. There will be very few people who know her. So I thought this is a better place. And finally I thought that you'll do service here. You cannot do a practice, right? You can only do internal service in Vrindavan, meditating on Radha Krishna. But here you'll do two types of service. You'll meditate on Radha Krishna, and by showing how to lead your body in a perfect way, you'll do the highest service to the devotees in this community, who ordinarily have no understanding of what it means to give up your body in Krishna consciousness. Because most of you have not seen someone give up their body in Krishna consciousness. I had that good fortune to be able to personally serve Prabhupada, and I have seen others also in Vrindavan give up their body. But here you'll have an example, you know, of an exalted Vaishnava giving up her body in Krishna consciousness, and you'll never forget this. And you'll understand what I have to do, each one of us has to do one day. So it's very sobering. And I think that she has become, you know, she is the biggest preacher. You know, so I'm so proud and pleased that my disciple could, you know, become such a great preacher in this way. And it's interesting, isn't it? In the fag end of one's life, with no strength practically in the body, you know, in every way you could say, discredited in so many ways, can do the biggest preaching. That means Krishna wants, if you surrender to Krishna, Krishna will work through you in extraordinary ways that you cannot imagine. So, I remember Prabhupada said that I had already given up mating and defending, and now I have given up eating and sleeping. And so we see the same happen with Kirtana. Right? There was no question of mating and defending. And now she's neither eating nor she's sleeping. So that's what happens. You give up eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. That means animal existence is finished. So this is such a good example for us. And this is how, you know, you want to overcome lust. This is my point. I hope you didn't feel that economic with what I said.
No.
Okay. Because I appreciate that you said Houston. I would rather you had said you like Houston rather than Dallas. I always prefer that because for various reasons I'm happy when people appreciate Houston more. Because I started that place from scratch. So I'm happy that you like that place. Here I'm only maintaining what Prabhupada did. There I try to increase something further. I look upon my service here as simply trying to maintain Prabhupada's deity that he established. So you're giving me some appreciation if I said that you like this. And there's others here. There are many people here who are captivated by Radharani Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Chandra likes the Houston Temple. He also appreciates it. Many people here have more preference, but they're stuck here for various reasons. But they go to Houston and they get the mood more there. And the mood is different. It's different moods, just like Varsana and Underground have different moods. I like to think like that sometimes, you know, that the moods are slightly different. The communities are a little different, but the individuals are all different. The deities are both very extraordinary. But it is difficult to be Kalachandji. Really, he looks both like, you know, he's the lover of Radharani, but he's also the wrestler of Chandora and Mustika. He looks like he's, he could any moment step into the wrestling arena. Very strong looking, even though he's much smaller than our deity in Houston. It doesn't look weaker. It's so nice that Prabhupada installed these deities. Great feeling to be able to serve your spiritual master and make sure that what he did carries on. And now the devotees are resting, worshiping their master. Okay, we'll stop here. Anybody have comments? Comments or questions? Carl, any questions? Rasa Kennedy.
Just Prabhupada used to say, whatever the yogis can achieve, a devotee can achieve all of that. I mean, whatever yogic perfection, the devotee automatically has it. I was just looking at Mother Kirti today. She was coming out of the shower. She was literally a bag of skin over the bones. And I thought, actually, her life is in the bones now, literally.
Yeah.
And this is so amazing that she can even walk in that body. It's just
She's a
amazing.
very strong person. I mean, apart from her Krishna consciousness, she has a tremendous iron will. It's very powerful. I mean, she held my hand yesterday, and I thought it's the same way when sometimes I arm wrestle with Sarata. Sarata sometimes, I have very difficult time defeating Sarata in arm wrestling, but I told Kirti that you could probably defeat Sarata. Her grip is so strong. So yeah, she's very strong. It's said that a person who has suffered a lot of illnesses can tolerate their pain much greater than another person who hasn't. I always thought that my illnesses were meant to prepare me for when I have to give up my body. Because otherwise I never had really anything wrong. And I was very sensitive to pain. But I think that by going through that experience now, I'm a little bit more prepared. She's had so many experiences to prepare her.
Just Gurudev was in reference to the verse when Prabhupada was citing was it a hold down of Lord Brahma?
Yeah, Lord Brahma had to change his body, actually.
So, I
should have said more about that.
we did yes.
Yeah, now, so the question could be raised that if Brahma is a member of our disciplic succession, not just a member, after Krishna, he's the first member. What does this say? I think where the audience is as important as the speaker. I had this in my mind to mention. It's just a good point. Now, there's many lessons to be learned from this, I think. Here we have an example of an Acharya who suffered a fall death. Now, in order to redeem himself, he gave up his body, etc. He changed his body. Remember what it says in the Bible? Exactly. Huh? His body became fog. So, there has to be some sort of, if there is a fall down, how to deal with that. Our movement has suffered this problem many times with persons in the position of a guru or an acharya having fall downs. And they can't give up their body as fog, like Lord Brahma. But Brahma was not rejected. One thing one could say is that certainly in his case, it was providential or arranged by the Lord to teach others. See if Prabhupada says something. There's specific, he just says there's specific instances to teach us. I always would caution about rejecting a guru or a charya, because although it is not to be considered that such a person should fall down, there are examples like this. But then they have to rectify, and the rectification has to be complete. In Brahma's case, it was a complete rectification. So he was not rejected, and they went on accepting him as the, father and acharya practically. So if a person rectifies himself, but I haven't found that our movement is nearly so, what would you say? Forgiving. As the person's, Brahma's sons were forgiving. They weren't easygoing on him, though. They demanded that he stop this, and he had to give up his body. So they were very tough, but they were also very, in the ultimate issue, they were prepared. They considered, you are our father, so we have no choice but to accept you as such. But you have to get back to the position of being a proper father. So that kind of sobriety is very special. The biggest problem is that we, in this movement, and not just in this movement, but all over the world, we lack culture. We lack culture. We do not know how to act in a proper way. And very quickly we reject and we accept things too easily, we reject things too easily. But we don't act according to our duty or expect others to act. And once someone acts according to duty, they're fixed up. And Prabhupada next is coming. There's a very nice book that was written, compiled by Virabhava Prabhu. Very good book about Guru Tattva. It didn't go into a reprint, but I thought it was one of the very best books. And Prabhupada makes the point, because someone may say, if someone was a guru, how could they fall down? That means they never were guru. Prabhupada says no. He rejects that argument. He says no. He says, just like and I think he makes the point, if your digestion is acting one day, and then another day it means you don't have good digestion, it doesn't mean that, something to the effect, it doesn't mean that you were not digesting properly before, or that you should not eat now. But you have to get it in order. So Prabhupada says, when he was a guru, then he stopped being one, and he can be one again, if he acts properly. The point is to act properly. Because anyone can go out of consciousness. The fact that someone does not stay in Krishna consciousness is not extraordinary, because here's the example of Brahma and Shiva. Both of whom gave up their Krishna consciousness for a certain amount of time. But they came back to it properly. So the point is how to come back to it properly. But we don't give that allowance. We just reject people very quickly. Is that what you want?
Yes.
Check on each other.
Krishna states that in Gita that if somebody has fallen,
if they're properly situated, then even if they have some fall down or mistake, if they act as if not in a sadhu way, but if they rectify it, Krishna says very quickly they will be rectified. Therefore, it's advised that you should let the person have time to rectify. But if it's seen that the person is hopelessly addicted to sense enjoyment, then you have to give up the connection.
I can know Thakur's comment on the Bhaktivedanta verse is that the person who sees the other person's problem is the one who gets affected, the one who suffers, the one who's that's the abominable act. Turns it around the other way.
Say it again.
If I see another person and I criticize them, it's the next verse. It's very soon will become righteous.
Yeah, very soon it become righteous.
Who will become righteous? The person who does not condemn the one who is fallen.
And what about the person who's fallen?
Also, that was his particular.
Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada so Bhaktivedanta reverses it, says very quickly he'll become righteous again. It means that the person who is observing and connected to the person who's fallen, if depending on how he takes the thing, then he can be rectified. Because you also, if you become polluted, you can become polluted both by connection to the person or through studying the person, being with the person, or whatever. But you have to be saintly in your ability to be kind and compassionate, just like a father may maintain the children for so long. So if the father becomes ill and then his relationship becomes reversed, even if he doesn't become ill, when the father becomes old, the children's relationship becomes like father, and the father becomes like the child. The relationship becomes, but that doesn't mean that father's not a father. It just means that you have to take on a different relationship of service. I know with Prabhupada, when Prabhupada became ill, I was praying that that I pray that I can simply do intimate service to him. And Prabhupada let me do so many things which appeared to be like I was looking after him, whereas he had always been looking after me. But I never got confused in my mind about it. But I appreciated that Prabhupada gave me the opportunity to care for him, to make decisions for him, where he never would have done before like that. But it means that he had enough confidence to allow him to do that. Ladies, questions? No. Yes, Nandini.
So great. How does it not feel insurmountable to overcome obstacles?
How what?
How is it going to understand or feel not discouraged or not like the mountain is too high to climb when we hear passages like this in Scripture?
When we hear,
For example, this situation with Brahma.
oh, how should we not become discouraged? Because, well, what Brahma rectified himself, though, and what Shiva rectified themselves. And, you get mercy. You get a lot of mercy. In the Kali Yuga, you get lots of mercy by the grace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And I think Prabhupada has extended Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy unlimitedly. I think look at the mercy that Prabhupada extended by installing deities and spreading the holy name to so many unqualified people. You get lots of opportunity. And Krishna is kind also. I think that we should realize that Krishna is not some ferociously harsh God who's going to stand there and judge and reject us. You're making so much effort, but you could do better. Each person should think, I can do better. But Krishna is also very kind. I always wonder, I remember one time I was in New Vrindavan, Kirtananda, I was talking to him about something, and he, I really appreciate what he said that day. He said, we were talking about either someone had died or someone had fallen away. But Kirtananda made the comment, he said, I think that God is very unlimitedly magnanimous. He said, and we should not limit what he may do in terms of forgiveness. Of course, you can take advantage of that and think, well, I can do any nonsense, and God will forgive me. But I appreciated his point that, Krishna is very kind also. And he says in the Bhagavad Gita that what I preserve what they have, and I carry what they have, I preserve what they have, and carry what they lack. So Krishna makes up also whatever we're short. So I never feel, I have to say sometimes in these last 5 or 6 years, there have been times that I have been moved to feel more hopeless than ever before. But still, devoted, I knew I should have brought this letter. This extraordinary letter I got. I was at I could say it was like a dark night of the soul. It was like I was feeling so deeply morose and in a difficult way. And suddenly I get this letter from my godbrother, Dasarath Das. Out of nowhere, he sends a letter to me telling me how important the work that I'm doing is, and for this service, how very, very important it is. And this incredible letter, and the words were exactly what I needed to hear. And I just became uplifted by it. And I saw that Krishna just comes to you when you most need him in the most unexpected ways and rescues you. I think, there's another thing. I remember Satsvrumar said to me when I found this little deity, Radhamdar. And he said, what's surprising is not that you discovered this deity, but that you accepted when you discovered the deity that the deity was Krishna. So that is what amazes me. He said anybody else would just, oh, okay. But he said that you accepted, immediately accepted now Krishna is present and you began to worship this deity. So that is extraordinary. So I think it is not what is extraordinary, is not that someone makes a mistake, but it's how they respond to the mistake afterwards. How they correct themselves is what is important. It is not, that you may, if you judge someone by a situation they're in, thinking they can't be in a very good Krishna consciousness, why would they be in this situation? But more important is to see how they respond once they're in this situation. How do they handle that situation? That's what you have to see. Like so many people became bewildered. Why did I go back to the university? Many people said to me, you're already a sannyasi, you know everything. Why do you want to go? You have nothing to learn from these people. But I think that you can't understand why I did this. You don't understand why. You can't judge the guru. And you can't quite understand why I did what I did. But you have to see how I handled it. Once I did what I did, how did I handle it? That's what you have to look. And you can't also know what the future is. So you cannot know what Krishna will do with what I have done. So people should be very cautious in judging such things. Just because it doesn't fit in to an idea that they have, a conception they have of what is sannyas. Prabhupada did many things that broke the conception of sannyas. Prabhupada performed marriage ceremonies. What business does sannyasi have doing that? Prabhupada gave women a place to live in our movement, in the temples. Never before had that been done. So many things Prabhupada did. He lived with people who were very fallen. He let them cook for him. He broke the mold. Bhaktivedanta Saraswati rode into Radhakund and rode into Vrindavan in an automobile. And he said, when he was asked why you're doing it, he said, I came to chase out all of these bogus santas out of this place. He wore leather shoes. When sannyasis were going barefoot, he wore not ordinary leather shoes, not Birkenstocks. So what do we say? Imagine if you had judged these persons. But they were moved by Krishna in a certain way. I can only hope that that's what happened with my going to the university. I had no desire to do such a thing. I had no thought of doing such a thing. But somehow, circumstances were arranged in such a way that that's what happened. So you have to see how I responded to that and judge that way.
Just like when Prabhupada wanted always to stay in New York, and at that time there was an incident that he was pushed out.
Yeah, Prabhupada was called to Los Angeles. He stalled Rukmini Dwarkadish, built this huge community, and then the circumstances arranged themselves where he felt forced to leave it. And he told me, he stood in front of the deity of Rukmini Dwarkadish and he said, I don't know why you're pushing me away now. Then, 7 years later, in Vrindavan, Prabhupada told me the story, and he said, now I understand that Krishna pushed me out of Los Angeles to give me this Vrindavan temple, which is 100 times what Los Angeles is. He said, but at the time, I could not understand. So you can't understand why Krishna sometimes does something to a devotee. And if you judge it in a small way, you'll commit offenses. You have to understand that the Lord can act in very, mysterious ways and do very extraordinary things, which we cannot put into our tiny brain. We cannot fit them into our tiny brain. That's why when Narayana Muni was, he went to Vaikuntha and he asked the Brahmin and he asked the the shoemaker, any request to make of Lord Narayan. And they each had requests. Then later on, when he came back, and they asked, what do you think Lord Narayan is doing? And the Brahmins said, when Narada Muni said, he's passing an elephant through the eye of the needle. And the Brahmin said, that's nonsense. Nobody can do so. Nobody can pass an elephant through the eye of a needle. That's nonsense. But the shoemaker, was it shoemaker? Yeah. The shoemaker said, how wonderful. What can our Lord not do? So the Lord wants to send a sannyasi to Cambridge University. So it's difficult to think that God is unlimited. He can't do such a thing. I think Prabhupada, I know when Prabhupada had a disciple who was doing something wonderful, everywhere he went, he was introduced this person. I'm quite sure that Prabhupada would introduce me and say, this is my sannyasi disciple who's going to the University of Cambridge doing a PhD dissertation on me. I'm not doing a PhD dissertation on some mundane subject. I'm doing it on Prabhupada. Who else can do a PhD on Prabhupada? Can some Karmi scholar do it? I don't think so. Who is better to do it than someone who is his personal servant and secretary? He knows Prabhupada better than anybody. So, sometimes things you have to break the mold. You have to break the mold sometimes. And you don't break it, but Krishna sometimes breaks it. I had no desire to break this mold. But Krishna had some higher plan. He broke the mold. And I just acted like a puppet. Okay? We went over time. Everything was late. The deity greeting was late. Kirtan went long, and the class went too long. Pleasure talking to the Vaishnav,
Go.